The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend editions here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, and Elijah Herbal. Busy week, and before we were, before we were getting.
Is there ever not one here? It's like as the world turns around here.
It is, and we'll get to the week of the drama. And I was just kind of reviewing before we got kicked off here.
Where do you start?
Well, yesterday morning on ESPN Radio with Keyshawn. J. Will and Mizunta Hente, and I'm halfway through the Keyshawn segment, and there's been the last two instances where Keyshawn's kind of gone off on Nebraska, and they lay out accurately for a national program, pretty accurately, just the painting of Nebraska, the hiring of Frost, and just what his rep was and is with the hire coming back to Lincoln. So it's not often a national show that spends more time on NBA and NFL can dial in because of relationships with college football. And I'm at the point right now where Keyshawn Johnson's describing that, Nebraska fans are a crazed fan base, and we are, and that's a good thing. You care, you love your football program, you're proud of it, and you want it to be great again. But Keyshawn, I mean, his bias is not checked at the door here at all. And I get it because Mike Riley put him on the map. Mike Riley threw him the football 37 times in the Rose Bowl, and Keyshawn was a great player at SC. Keyshawn was the number one pick overall for the Jets. I mean, it's not every day a wideout goes number one overall in the NFL. So I appreciate Keyshawn's loyalty, but don't stare into the camera and tell me that Mike Riley had things set to go and ready to roll. He's revising it. He's still butthurt about his kid leaving. I mean, It's not an accurate painting here. Now, is Nebraska struggling right now in the perception game? Absolutely. Do things look really pretty bad from an outside standpoint? Not only record, but also the departures with the names associated. I didn't get to the end of the segment, but I know where they're going. When you talk the name attachment to the player, McCaffrey and Warner, and then you got Coach Frost doing 3 media sessions in the last week, 2 radio hits, and a sit-down with the World Herald and Journal-Star. And you got to accentuate the positive. I get it about what you have at Adrian, what you have with the young players. I'm glad that there's been a slew of social media support by kids for their program and their coach. I'm glad there was bowling night on Thursday where all the assistants were out there bowling with the team.
Yeah, look, they're trying to show. Look,
they are. It's been a week of
everything's fine.
It's Kevin Bacon in Animal House saying all is well, and maybe things aren't as bad as they're being painted, but they sure as hell don't look good from an optic standpoint. No. And a perception standpoint, because that's going to hammer your recruiting in unless you start winning ball games. The bottom line is this, and I thought Marty and McGee just were great before we got on about the Nebraska and Tennessee parallel, because that was part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. And it was, are you going to let it happen? As a fan base, are you going to let this happen? And we don't know what that is. Is it going to turn into, by year 5, year 6, you're back to winning 7, 8, 9 ball games, and you're climbing again? We don't know what 2021 will be. It could be a fight for 500 where your schedule's so loaded that you're in a lot of ball games and you see improvement and you beat some teams you're not supposed to beat and you beat some teams you're supposed to beat. I mean, all things, Kranak, are fixable and doable. It just kind of comes down to figuring out what you want to do and how you do it, because the thought is this guy's a smart enough coach to do it, and I agree with that. I think when push comes to shove, Scott's a really good football coach. It kind of comes down to the management side that's a work in progress, and we can dive into all of it, but you've been able to sit back this week and kind of observe. You're a media specialist. What's your take on things? Because it's been just a lot of drama, okay? And that was potential to happen, and you just don't know if it's the program or if it's just the portal, right? Is it the climate we live in, or is it the climate down on 10th and Vine?
Look, and then there's a lot in there. There's so much. There's so many kind of rabbit holes you can go down. You can look at each case individually,
which you need to do.
Sure, and you can come up with viable reasons / excuses why they happened, and you can also come up with sky is falling scenarios for each of them. Right? You just can't. It just depends on how you want to digest it, what kind of spin you want to put on it. And you can look at Nebraska in comparison to other programs. And if you look at from December of 19 up to now, Nebraska is way up there in terms of amount of guys that have transferred. Nationally, Nebraska is among the most. It's most in the Big Ten outside of Maryland. So you can look at that. Or you can look at just this year in particular, where Nebraska's got, I believe, 7 players in the portal this cycle. And that's actually not very high. And
Notre Dame's got 12. I mean, you know.
Right. Northwestern's up there, including their top 2 running backs. Right. So, look, the transfer portal is a thing, and it's a thing everywhere. But what I think is maybe different here are a few things. One, this is on the heels of 3 years of Frost, 3 losing seasons. A captain and your 2 top wide receivers have all decided to transfer out in the past couple years. Look, it's not good. So you can't sit here and say it's all good. But I think more than anything, what stands out more than anything is that you have a North Stadium complex, a program, at least as of that moment when Luke McCaffrey finally said he's gone. At that very moment, at that snapshot in time, you could easily say that you have a team, a roster, a program that is not on the same page. There are too many human beings within that program not on the same page. And that is freaking poison for a program. You know what I mean? You cannot have that. You cannot have people who were definitely team guys, right? From all accounts, at least according to them. Love their teammates, love their coaches until they didn't. A lot of people not on the same page. We saw bits of that too with the coaching staff, with Greg Austin saying one thing, Scott Frost saying another. Right? You see a little bit of it. It's less so with Chenander, but Chenander bristles sometimes, and there's this like offense defense kind of rivalry thing.
Well, think about it.
There's just
right,
Chris. So just hold on, real quick.
No,
so they're not on the same page. Too many people. So at that moment in time, now when you say it's fixable, it is fixable. That completely is fixable. Nebraska's problem is not that it doesn't have fast and strong dudes or big dudes. That's not its problem. They got that. They're okay. I don't even think it's a scheme thing. I think their schemes are okay, but what play calls are you going to do? So it's fixable, but you shouldn't underestimate how hard it is to fix.
Oh, sure.
Right? You now have to, and this is why Frost doesn't get paid $5 million a year, $6 million a year, whatever the hell it is. He doesn't get paid just to draw up good plays. He doesn't get paid just to recruit. He gets paid to make sure that entire thing is on the same page, going in the same direction, which will lead to wins. Something that he is doing or not doing, something probably multiple things that he is doing or not doing, or that he's letting slide, or that he's letting slip, or that he's not paying attention to. Something is leading to all of this that we see. A sloppy offense, sloppy special teams, guys leaving. Something's there. There's no question. There's something there, right? What is it? And I don't think we know. You hope that he knows. You hope that he figures it out. Because it is fixable, but it's not easy.
Well put. And if we're looking at some of the changes he has intimated, or differences with more attention to X, Y, and Z, so my head's not buried in the play sheet.
Okay, that could be one thing.
It is being more well-rounded and being a head coach, not just the guy who's kind of in on the offense. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to be able to know and coach and address and fix all things that ail your program. That's special teams. That is development. And I think you're right. They have big, strong, fast dudes. But where have your skill position kids, what have they done aside from transfer?
And what have you done to get them the ball so they can use those skills?
Well, and guess what?
Right.
If you got a plan that you believe in that can work, then go at it. Versus, I have felt like, especially last year, how did the year start? Let's have 4 different plans and setups for Luke McCaffrey, starting with his role against Ohio State. And then towards the end of the year, like snap count wise, you had minimal snap counts for Luke because it was quarterback, right, where he was back at. And let's get Wandale the ball in droves, because Wandale didn't get the ball a lot in the first few games, right? I mean, you're trying to manage your talent where you feel like you got to get the ball to these guys to keep them happy. I feel like poor Frosty's spent the last year and a half trying to just keep dudes here.
I think you're right.
That has affected the play calling and maybe the direction of a true identity offensively. All the while staying loyal to Adrian Martinez. And you can say a lot of things about Adrian with injury, with freshman year, with sophomore year, with junior year. But one thing he did get right with his quarterback, his cornerstone recruit, he got a dude that's mentally tough. And going into year 4, there's truly nothing he's not seen or been through, which you hope will help come fourth quarters in a lot of tight ball games. So that was one silver lining out of this bleep show of a season, where your quarterback didn't crack and go into a shell after being benched, because 9 times out of 10, that happens in college football. Hell, that can happen in pro football.
No, he's developed some mental callus there, right? It's good. And you're right. I think there was a degree. This is all in hindsight. You don't necessarily realize it then while it's happening, but there's probably one part of this discussion that you just alluded to is coddling of some players, right? Of just sort of trying to placate them. Looking down the road and being like, oh, crap, if we don't get Luke involved.
They're good players, too, so it makes sense to use them, too.
Sure, it does. But you're also, in some ways, you're maybe compromising the integrity of the system of your offense, and you're not necessarily calling things for the right reasons. And here's the thing, it didn't work.
Right.
So if there was some coddling there, if there was some, go out of your way to mention Luke being the future around here at quarterback in press conferences, if you're going out of your way to placate a couple of guys and it didn't work, they both left, right? It's like, hopefully that's a lesson for Scott, where he's like, you know what? No, I can't do that. I can't act like that. It's people see through it as sort of fake or as desperate or as whatever, and it doesn't work anyways. They leave anyway. So what's the point? So hopefully there's a lesson learned from that, and hopefully, and I think he said something else that I wonder if it was more of an admission than it seems like, when he said, we've got a lot of good players here. I think he said this to Greg Sharp on Sports Nightly. something along the lines of, we got a lot of good players here. I can't spend a second worrying about guys that are here. I got to worry about the guys that are.
Right. Yeah.
And I wonder, to me, that was a bit of an admission that he has been worried about the wrong things a little bit too much. Right. It could be, I might be reading into that too much, but that's all we have to go on, of course, is like these few kind of moments in time when he interacts with the media and we just pick it apart, against the backdrop of all these people leaving. But I think all of this ultimately comes down to a question for Husker Nation, which is, does Frost deserve the benefit of the doubt to get it fixed? Are you willing to give him the benefit? Like Mike Riley did not get the benefit of the doubt. And I'm not saying he should have or shouldn't, but he just didn't. He did not get it. Right. He was just like, get the hell out of here. Leave our program now. Is Frost going to get the benefit of the doubt that he can figure it out and that he deserves more time? Because, look, man, I am not convinced. I'm sorry. This isn't to be alarmist or whatever. And I think to some people, this won't even seem that surprising. But, like, dude, I don't think they can survive. I don't think the Frost Moose thing can survive 4-8 this year. I just don't. I think do you know what I mean? Year 4.
Listen.
I just don't think they can. I think they have to win. Look, it's easy to say no. Oh no, he gets plenty of time. They just extended him. Blah blah blah. But I'm just saying, how is this place responding? If it's
North
not, Dakota,
it's not been well, dude. It's not been well the last 2 years because you had the expectations. Yeah. And while Nebraska fans had so much pride going on with the fight to play, you lose your mind as a fan base when you're helping the other team beat you. I mean, it's just fundamental football that, all right, so you're not getting pushed around on the lines of scrimmage. That's a check in the positive box. Great. But
dude, there has been improvement. Absolutely.
No, there has been, but it's still like there's moments where there's just errors and sloppiness that screw yourself. And that is maddening if you're a Nebraska fan, or the inability to kind of zero in or go away from what was working in an offense that's going the wrong direction. So there's some second guessing. It feels like there's uncertainty, or at least it looks like that on Saturdays, and there's no off weeks in the Big Ten. So in the same breath, they're a touchdown away from beating Northwestern. If they don't throw a pick in the red zone, they beat Northwestern. They're right there with Iowa, driving to win that bastard 28-27 or 27-26. What happens? Strip sack with your senior captain. And this isn't to pile on Farniok, but I mean that's one of the voices of your team that people are supposed to listen to and look towards, and what happens? That guy's not one of your best players, right? You need to match. Right. You need to match that up.
Is all of this stuff that happened? And we cannot answer this question right now.
No, your question. No, I'm going to answer it. I'm going to answer it, and the answer is again, I go back to letting it happen. As frustrated as you are, I pray for Nebraska fans it isn't 3-9, 4-8. Or even 5. I mean, a lot of it is, how does it look? Does it look the same where you're helping beat yourself? Or if you're losing say 2 years ago, Pat Fitzgerald went 3-9. All right, in between quarterbacks with a great defense. Now that would not play, but it's not like Northwestern got housed in many games during their 3-9 campaign. They lost all of them like 13-10.
Sure.
So what does progress look like in comparison to your record? Do you play better football and you're just a year away from depth and talent? And I know we've been saying, well, it's next, we turned into Cub fans. Just next year. But
very similar.
In all seriousness, a lot of it depends on how they look. Can you hone in on an offense? Can you do what you need to win versus worrying about how you look when you try to win? And all of that's a maturity and a step thing. So, yes, there's a runway. Yes, I believe that these guys are the ones that can get it fixed. And I think you need to resist the reset, because it's been the problem that's caused all of this for the last 20 years. You hit reset and start the game over after 3, 4, 5 years, 7 years after Pelini. He was winning 9, 10 ball games. That's a freaking wet dream right now.
Well, listen, too. Look, we know that there was a lot of not same paging going on, right?
Well, we know that was comes down to the CEO part of your job that you nailed.
It could be. So what we don't know right this second is if all of that turnover that has happened, all of the transfers, the players that have elected not to come back for their extra year, or the players that have elected to go into the NFL draft or that have transferred, does that actually help Nebraska get on the same page? Were some of those folks malcontents in one way or another that somehow was allowed to sort of fester, maybe did so passive aggressively and kind of affected things in the locker room? Don't know. We can't answer that question right this second, right? Now, I think people are quick to be like, addition by subtraction, like the people that are Frost apologists. Get them out of there. They don't want to be here. Get them out of here. And there's some truth to that. I get it. But what you don't know is that a symptom? Is them leaving actually really that? Is it actually better for the program overall? Which we won't know until the fall. The answer to that question, right? If Nebraska's reeling off wins against Wisconsin, do you think any of us are talking at all about Wandale or Luke?
That's the big thing.
We won't care.
Winning.
So, you don't know if all of this stuff is good. But what you started this thing with sure as hell doesn't look good. It does not look good. And we got our heads in the sand if we just excuse it all away. But the thing is, I think the reason why you bring in Frost in the first place, the reason why you give him 6 years, I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt. I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt to make it right. And maybe what we just went through, actually helps the entire program get on the same page. Maybe you wish it didn't happen like that. There's probably a way to do it without going through those rasher transfers. Mm-hmm. Or come fall, it's the same old crap show and the offense is sloppy and the special teams can't kick a ball into the end zone and no one can stop a return. No one can muster a return, and you're turning it over all the time. And you're 4-8 again.
Meanwhile, the punching bag part of this equation's the unit that's done the best part, has gotten better, and is going to be your strength next year is the defense.
I agree. But I do want to slow the roll a little bit there, just because they're all coming back.
Right.
I get the sense that people are expecting 90s era black shirts or something. It's like, dude,
no, it ain't going to be 09, but they get to continue their progress. Yeah. With some really good players. And, it says a lot to me in a world where most places are averaging 4 to 5 yards a play on a given snap. What says the world to me is Nebraska dropped, and Kranak, you and I go back a lot of years with football, so anything above 2.5 yards per carry sucks. Okay.
Yeah.
But in today's reality of college football, Nebraska's defense in front seven dropped their yards per carry allowed by 1.5 yards.
Yeah, that's significant.
That's huge. And
doing that within only here's the other thing that I don't think we spend enough time on is the fact that it was a conference only schedule.
Right.
Versus being able to have those stat padding games.
There was no fluff
in the non-con.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to do that specifically with a Big Ten schedule, specifically with a pretty tough Big Ten schedule.
Uh-huh. And I know Nebraska. I know Wisconsin wasn't in there, but not Nebraska's fault for that.
Yeah.
So
mask up, Madison. What do you think?
No, great
social distance.
Great
Barry.
Great points, and the benefit of the doubt is the question, and
some hand sanitizer, Mertz.
The reality is also this is your guy to do it. And right, there's that feeling out there that if he can't do it, who can? And right now, there's been some out loud or message board thinking of, well, maybe somebody else can do it. I think Frost deserves, his staff is up and down as it's been. There's been some progress. He gets that you need to be better on the lines of scrimmage. They've addressed that. And they got to get the rest of it fixed, and that comes down to the offensive identity. I would love to figure out just where they want to go versus what they've been trying to please on offense, right?
It's a mismatch. It's been so frustrating and confusing to watch because you don't know.
Because you'll see some series where they'll come out and be able to run the football.
Yeah. And
the play action's nice. And I think Adrian can be a really good, consistent quarterback. Got to take care of the football. But, man, I'm not in on right now blowing it up again or just saying it's over, it's done. Let there be some growth and some continued maturity. I don't know what Scott's role was when it comes to being hands-on or hands-off at Central Florida. I know they kicked butt. I know they had a ton of talent.
Yeah.
So this is, and it's not an excuse, but is it new for him to have to really be all-knowing, all-seeing on the football team? That you would assume that, but this is really a concerted effort now to pay attention to special teams. I mean, there's been missteps along the way, absolutely, but it's not like you can't correct those. And if you're a Nebraska fan, you hope it translates to better games, more wins, and being able to just get it done in the fourth quarter. Because that's what next year's going to be. It's going to be a dogfight against Buffalo. Like Lance Leipold's name's out there for Tennessee. Nebraska fans remember him. He's killed it wherever he's gone. Yeah. You've got the pig farmer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's what I'm saying. Can he withstand that? Like, can Buffalo roll into Lincoln and get a W?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And everything's going to be fine?
No.
Like, that's what I'm saying about 4-8 next year. Like,
no, the fan base
sucks to have this discussion, but like,
fan base will lose it.
Yeah, this place will not take that well.
No, it won't. But guess
what?
what?
Not deal with that well.
Guess what? Though it comes down though to the administration and the support. The place can be pissed, but ultimately there's decision makers, and you got to stand by your crew if you get to that point. If Nebraska's 3-1 after 4 games. And plays well enough to win with their schedule that's as stacked as it is, you know what? You got to look at it as progress, even though it may not be 9-4. Okay, go ahead.
It's just been a lot. Look, I think it also boils down to offensively. It's just a lot of uncertainty. The players just did not look certain at what they were running, right? Like the routes weren't sharp and crisp. The pace wasn't great. It's just like you gotta just like pick a path and then just be dead set on it. I don't know. It just seemed like there was a lot, and by seeing everybody transfer, you could tell there is uncertainty. People don't necessarily believe in what's going on, and so you're like, dude,
yeah, you need proof of concept is what you need. You need to see what you're being told is going to work and be successful. You needed to see it work and be successful on Saturdays. Rewind's coming up. We'll hear from Brandon Vogel in 25 minutes. Gary Sharp with us. And Pro Bowl kicker. Love catching up with this guy to talk some Super Bowl. Sam Koch from the Ravens next on Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Early to rise with Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Here's Chris Schmidt and Mark Cranick.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time to say hello to a Pro Bowler and the longtime punter for Baltimore, Sam Koch, back with us. Sam, how you been, man? It's been a while.
Doing good, Chris. Just enjoying the off season now with the family. Just watching these games these last couple weeks, and just wishing we were still playing, but just wasn't in the cards this year, but we're doing good.
I got to ask you, you guys were right there, and Baltimore is always a threat, and you're not that far removed from from a Super Bowl. For you personally, man, I mean, you've done 15 years. You've made Pro Bowls. You're just a staple when it comes to the world of punting and special teams. How did you deal with this COVID season? And I know you had to deal with COVID yourself. Do you mind taking us through your experience?
Yeah, it was just, mentally it was exhausting throughout the whole COVID experience, because from July 24th till I ended up contracting COVID, we were testing every day. Occasionally, we would have to do a rapid test with a PCR test if we ever got in close contact. And so, granted, it was just the swab of the nose rather than having to go all the way in the back, but it was just mentally exhausting, because every day you had to amount for an extra 15 minutes for testing and going through and getting your temperature checked 2 to 3 times each day. And then you having to make sure you wear Connexons. It has to be on you at all times, tracking close contacts, where you've been. And it was always keeping track of that day in, day out, and making sure you took the responsibility that you weren't close enough to somebody for longer than 6 minutes each day, because if somebody contracted it, then you would be close contact. And so it was pretty mentally exhausting, but and it's one of those things you got to fight through adversity in football, and it was one of those things. We did a great job of that as a team this year, and made that playoff run. But yeah, it's in some ways it's nice to not have to test anymore, but it sucks that we're not out there playing.
I was going to say, you've been on championship teams. How close is this group? And in the NFL, obviously things can change, but you've got Lamar at quarterback. You've got a really solid O-line. Your defense, I mean, that always is a real thing in Baltimore, and your special teams speak for itself. But, I mean, this team's not going anywhere. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our group of guys, it's a remarkable group of guys. Our rookies that came in this year are just some of the best rookies I've seen come in 15 years. They come to work. They don't, complain. Go to meetings. They're responsible, on top of guys to be around, and the chemistry that, as a young guy that brought to the team along with the older veterans, it was a solid chemistry this year. And I look forward to having that opportunity next year with these guys, because we got a great group of guys.
Sam Koch is with us on Hail Varsity Radio, Pro Bowl punter for Baltimore. And chemistry can be a funny thing on each level of football, right? And you've seen some years where there's chemistry, and some years that chemistry's got to grow. What are the keys to chemistry, in your opinion, for a pro franchise?
Well, I think it's one of those things. The older guys, looking up to the older veterans, asking for advice. You saw a lot of that this year, and the veterans, taking that leadership role and bringing those rookies under their wings and teaching them what it's like to go through this long season, because college seems so short until you get into the NFL, and that's 16 weeks the 17 weeks with the preseason, and then if you make it to the postseason, you got to understand the magnitude, and just everybody buying into the one system, I think plays a huge role. And by the leadership that we had this year, these guys were remarkable, with Calais and Mark Ingram, and even some of the younger guys like Lamar Jackson. The types of things that they did this year, it was very cool to see. And so everybody buying into the same paradigm and just sticking to that plan.
You get to see practice, obviously, because you're there. Does Lamar just kind of wow you? You've been around, and I mean, you're there. You see the best of the best every Sunday. And what's your take on Lamar as far as his athleticism?
Yeah, so as far as Lamar, the guy is just a spectacular athlete. And watching him come in on his first couple years, to seeing where he's at now and the type of progress that he has made and confidence that he instills through his throwing and his running and out there on game days is pretty cool to see. And, it all comes with the amount of work that he's been wanting to put in. He's put in a lot of work in meetings, a lot of work out on the field and trying to get better and building those relationships with receivers and O-linemen. And it's very cool to see. And you hope that more and more rookies that come in start seeing that and paying attention to that.
Sam, tell me about your work ethic. You've been a longtime vet, and you're regarded as kind of a trendsetter with just your repertoire of pitches, because you're a guy who works on his craft. Take me through, how you keep getting better, how you keep refining, because you're kicking in all sorts of elements.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, I'm just never satisfied. It's like you can have the greatest game, and it could always be better. And so having that mindset is just putting that forward each day, going out there and doing the things, the right things, the necessary things to improve in every aspect of the football game, whether it be through meetings in the weight room, my nutrition, the way my body feels, paying attention to that. Just a lot of things that go into it, and I'm always trying to find ways to become better and improve any sort of aspect of the game or my lifestyle.
Sam Koch's with us on Hail Varsity Radio. How did you eat in college, and when did you start eating and paying attention to nutrition in the NFL?
How did I eat in college? Geez, well, at Nebraska, you had the buffet that you ended up just going there, and whatever they had, you ate. So it was one of those things. I came in as a redshirt freshman at like 195, 200, and by the end of my my true freshman year, I think I was 242.
Wow!
And so I had my fair share, but we also did a ton of lifting with Dave Kennedy as our strength coach at that time. We did a ton of lifting, and between that and the food, I put on a lot of muscle and a lot of weight. But also knowing that once I got into the league, I didn't need to be the biggest guy on, as far as like a linebacker style. So it got to be more about learning how my body's responding to different lifts. So I got to make sure I'm flexible enough to get up through my punts, and finding those ways and those little intricacies that allow my body to be in the best shape for every game. And it takes years and years of trying to find that rhythm and that routine. But throughout all those years, I finally found a good routine that is pretty consistent. I try to make sure my sleeping's consistent. And, first and foremost is making sure the body's in the shape that it needs to be to go out there and practice every day and to be at the top of your game.
Sam, what was your Super Bowl experience like?
Yeah, going to that first Super Bowl, we always hear Ray Lewis is like, you won't appreciate it until you've actually been through it. And then once you've been through it, then you realize how cool it is, and that makes you want to get to it more and more. Well, when you go through that first Super Bowl and actually ever getting the opportunity, all you're thinking about is, man, just going out there and playing the game. But then you realize that you just kind of lost out on all the experiences because you were so focused on the game. And I think that's what drives me, is wanting to be able to get back to the Super Bowl and experience everything that went with a Super Bowl, and just being able to have that experience to sit back and reflect on.
You were so locked in the first time, you just didn't enjoy the ride, so to speak. Is that fair?
Exactly. So locked in, went and did my practice and tried to treat it as much of a normal week in football as I do every week. And throughout that, it was like, you go to practice, you go to your room. My family was out having fun in New Orleans, and that's fine. But me, my job was focused on making sure I did it to the best of my ability and making sure I stayed focused on the game.
Couple more minutes. Sam Koch with us on Hail Varsity Radio, Pro Bowl punter for Baltimore Ravens, another playoff run this season. So you have Tom Brady now down at Tampa, and for years it always seemed to come down to Baltimore and New England. And, of course, you've got Kansas City, and you've had a couple of showdowns with the Chiefs the last 2 regular seasons. Are you shocked, not shocked, that Brady's taken another team to the Super Bowl?
I mean, it just shows you the guy has people that just, they want to play good for the guy. And I think he, as a leader, insists that with his guys. And you see guys like Edelman and Woodhead go up there and just be great receivers, and everybody's on there because, they're trying to help out Tom Brady. And you see how good he is as a leader and how everybody responds to that. It's just so cool to see him take that Tampa team and be able to go to the playoffs. As much as I'd like it to be, us instead of the Chiefs down there, but it is what it is. But it's very cool to see, and I look forward to watching that game. And with Patrick Mahomes, watching him do his things, it's an extraordinary thing to watch.
A few more minutes. Former Husker standout and Pro Bowler for the Baltimore Ravens, Sam Koch, with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Sam, what is special teams worth? And I mean that not as an idiot question, but can you kind of put it into words what special teams is worth on a given Sunday in the NFL? I ask that because that's been a big emphasis for Coach Frost in Nebraska as they're trying to get their special teams up. And I know the NFL are 2 different levels. The NFL and college are 2 different levels. But just what is that third phase? What does it mean on a Sunday?
Well, it means a lot. Obviously, your punt team and field position is of utmost importance, and having the strong core with that and the kickoff and the field goal, I mean, it plays a huge part. And as a field goal or as a special teams unit, if you can go out there and produce a one positive play, or as in some ways that we put it, get 3 or 4 first downs, we are adding value. And to be able to go in there and have that one big play each game to change field position or create a turnover adds a lot of value each game. And being on special teams as long as I have, you try to go out there and you only get that one opportunity to create that play, and you got to make the most of every opportunity.
In some circles, you're the most accurate passer in the history of the NFL.
Well, yeah, in some circles. Let's not get too carried away.
What, you're 7 for 7 on fake punt completions?
Whatever that, I have no clue. I just go out there when they call it, I throw it.
So
I throw the ball and make sure it's a completion.
How many times do you practice in a week throwing the football?
I mean, it just depends on what we see. I mean, I throw the ball every day at practice.
Yeah.
Before the game, I throw pat and goes and, do all that type of stuff. So I throw a lot.
That's pretty cool. What have you kept an eye at all on Nebraska? Have you watched from afar?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I always keep an eye on Nebraska.
What's your take on things?
Not knowing Scott Frost, but the type of leader that he was when he played at Nebraska, I see positive things happening, and I have all the faith in him and the team that they got there. And it's sad that I hate to see Nebraska lose, and I want them to get back to the way it was in the mid-'90s and the early '70s and stuff like that. But it all takes time, and finding that chemistry that we were talking about earlier, it takes a group of guys wanting to find that chemistry together and be able to create a winning football team.
Sam Koch's with us. Sam, last thought. So when you walked on at Nebraska, I mean, because your high school career at Seward, you played O-line and D-line and fullback and tight end, and you also obviously kicked. Was it kind of pitched to you to kick at Nebraska, or did you become a kicker at Nebraska?
That was one of the things. They recruited me as a linebacker / punter kicker, and Coach didn't want me to come on and do the punting and kicking, see how I liked it. When spring ball came around the next year, if I wanted to do linebacker, then I could go try that. But after a year of just focusing on that, I realized, I enjoyed that, trying to get better at that, and just focus on that from there on out.
There's not a lot of linebacker punter combos, is there? That's pretty cool.
No, I don't believe so anymore. I mean, I think during my time there probably was some guys that were like that, but anymore it's just more or less specializing in punting and kicking.
Sam, best to you and your family, and enjoy the off season. Stay safe and healthy, and thanks for a few minutes with us.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Chris. Call anytime. Thanks for having me.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Back into it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery Weekend Edition. Big thanks to Sam Koch, punter for the Ravens, the pride of Seward, with his last hour. And kind of a week in review with all of the transfers and drama and talking points and media appearances for Scott Frost. And, man, let's get the spring season here to talk about some football, but a lot of discussion centering around Nebraska. We kicked things off with some commentary on Keyshawn Johnson's thoughts on the Nebraska football program. We welcome in managing editor with HailVarsity.com and magazine and author with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion, Brandon Vogel, with us this morning at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, good to spend some time with you. How's your Saturday morning going?
Pretty good so far. How are you guys?
We're good. I mean, we got to kick things off talking about Keyshawn Johnson, man, and his take on Nebraska football. What couldn't be better?
Never would you have thought that Keyshawn Johnson and Nebraska football would be so linked, but here we are. At least 5 years on from
removed
when they're past first cross. Uh-huh. So great stuff.
It's interesting. How do you kind of sift through the week? What's been your reaction? We'll start with the transfers. And is it something that can be overcome? Probably, but from a perception standpoint, is it as bad as it sounds, or how do you kind of gauge it?
I mean, it's not good for sure. I mean, the McCaffrey news, everybody I felt like was waiting for that. Like, it'd been rumored enough that it was kind of, there was plenty of smoke. And so you were just kind of waiting for, I finally found the fire. And there it was. So by the time that came down, I think a lot of people, myself included, had kind of already processed it. And it was going to be unique for Nebraska to kind of keep the perfect quarterback depth with, one guy per class that it had built up. It's symbolically, it's probably bigger than the impact it has on the season ahead. But you still, just the raw kind of numbers here and the amount of guys you're losing, it's going to be hard to get to where Nebraska wants to go to if you consistently lose half of your recruiting classes. I mean, we've talked a lot about that on this show. I've looked at it a lot, and it's kind of always there, about that 40% mark. But so far, you've already lost half of the first two, the 2018 class, or the 2017 and 2018 classes. Half those guys are already gone. So, unfortunately, you're ahead of schedule there in terms of the attrition rate, and you don't want to be ahead of schedule on this one.
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. When you boil it all down, I think when you're looking at the rash of transfers, plus maybe some of the communication issues that we detected during the year with, one coach saying one thing, another coach saying another. It's just, generally speaking, it just seems like a program that is not on the same page, right? Like, at the end of the day, when you boil it down, there is just a lot of guys going in a lot of different directions. do you think that more than anything is what Frost needs to figure out? And that can take on a lot of forms. It can take on a lot of forms to try to dig into. But end of the day, isn't that what he's paid $5 million a year to figure out? Is how do you get everybody going in the same direction? Because right now it just seems like they're not.
Yeah, I would agree. And, you're going to have transfers. You're going to have attrition. And I think most people, whether it happens in Nebraska or Oklahoma or Tennessee or wherever, for guys that came in, it didn't quite find the field as quickly as it happened, or as you thought it might happen. Like, everyone understands those. But when you have guys who, like J.D. Spielman and Wan'Dale Robinson, who were getting the ball a ton and were obviously focal points of the offense leaving, then it really underscores, like, okay, well, why don't these guys want to be here? So, yes, I think the primary challenge is getting Nebraska to a point where you're always going to have a handful of players leave, but it actually feels like players want to be there instead of them having to come out and say it in a flurry of tweets. That's where you want to. You got to get there. Like, it's all about kind of the team building aspect of it. And until you do that, it's going to be a real uphill climb.
Brandon Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. As you look at it, Vogues, is it as simple as winning as to why guys are so quick to leave? I mean, obviously the portal is – there's no roadblock, man. I-80's open, okay? You can get out if you want to get out, but is it proof of concept where, all right, I no longer have any faith this is going to work as an offensive player, so I'm out? Or is it something more like my brand, my aspirations beyond college? And I know it's not one thing per kid. It's different for every individual. But if you were to ballpark it, is it more about, okay, I'm not sure this is where I want to be because I'm frustrated with usage, or is it something about just we're not winning, man? This is no fun.
Yeah, winning solves a lot. I mean, it makes it lifts the mood around the program first and foremost, and I think that's both true internally and externally. And it is. I think the key thing is you kind of hit on a key word. It's just more fun. It's more fun to be around, and you're probably willing to deal with a little bit more. So, if you're a player who's like, I'm not quite doing exactly what I want to do or what they told me I would do when I was recruited, but we're winning, and I like the vibe around the office and the facility and the locker room, and it's pretty fun. And of course, if you're winning at Nebraska, the fan support is going to be even beyond what it already is. So you'd get a revel in that. And it's just, it solves a lot of things. The problem is what is this program and these coaches doing right now to take steps to make sure those wins don't come? Because it's super easy to say, like, yeah, this is the record after 3 years, and it should probably be this. And it shouldn't be worse. It should be better. So how are you going to ensure those wins come? Because you can just sit around and wait for them, and maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe one year you'll only lose 2 of your 14 fumbles and gain 10 of the opponent's 15. Like, those things happen. But then you're sitting around waiting for it to happen, and I don't know if Nebraska can do that.
Brandon Vogel with us on Hail Varsity Radio. I did an unofficial count, so don't hold me to this, but I believe – so let's just talk about the players that are here and what's left and what maybe they're trying to salvage or create. I counted, I believe, 53 players that are 6'4" or taller on the roster. Whether or not those are accurate heights is another story, but it's a big freaking team. Like, physically a lot of large human beings are walking around North Stadium right now. Receiver position, that has drastically changed in terms of the options that you have. And then I think running backs, they're seeming to prioritize guys with size a little bit more. What do you think we see on offense this year, considering the body types that they have brought in and kind of the amount of holes they have to fill. I mean, pretty much all of your main offensive guys, skill-wise, guys that get the ball, a lot of them are gone outside of tight end. What does this thing turn into? What do you think they're building?
Well, I think the basic model for what they wanted to build, which Frost kind of alluded to 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of, the elements of Oregon with the old school power of Nebraska, which gets cited all the time. Now, Nebraska was in the Big 12 at that point, and I think the early years in the Big 10, or with this staff, they quickly realized, they probably came in expecting, okay, we're going to need a good deal of size and physicality. I think it was probably even a little higher than maybe they were expecting. But on that front, they've done pretty good. Like you mentioned, just the sheer size difference with where this team looks at after 3 recruiting cycles, about to be 4. And, okay, it's there. You got to see it. And how does it translate to offense? That one's still – it's tough for Nebraska in 2021 when you just look at what would be fair to expect based on what's returning and what's not. You feel okay on the offensive line, got your quarterback back. Receivers, yes, you've got that size there. So, but it's largely unproven, and you need a running back to step up. I mean, they need to be able to run the ball with their running backs and then hit downfield shots with this receiving core that has gotten bigger. And I mean, I understand every football team in the country wants to do those things, but I still really do think that's the model. And then you add the pace piece to it, and you can start gobbling up yards and chunks if you're able to hit on those two things.
Brandon, continuing down this thread of what the offense is going to look like next year, now that Luke McCaffrey is out and he's in the transfer portal, we can assume that Adrian Martinez is going to be the starter next season. But do you think that Nebraska should go and prioritize a quarterback in the transfer market to give Adrian some competition and maybe give the Husker fans someone to call for if Adrian Martinez isn't playing up to the standards that we'd expect from a Nebraska quarterback next year?
I would wait until you've got spring football in and see, because spring football is going to add some guys to the portal too around the country. It's just the way that it works. But I know the coaching staff's pretty high on Logan Smothers. I'm really interested to see him. So I think that determination comes down to how they feel about where Smothers is at, as technically still a true freshman, but with the benefit of being able to practice and being able to go on the road and experience college football, even though he didn't get into any games. So I think that's the key factor. It's a little bit risky. It depends a lot on how you feel about Smothers now, because if you wait until after the spring and you go on and say you bring in a transfer QB at that point, a guy who's maybe started some games somewhere else, then you're into an off season, a summer again of being well, is Adrian the guy, or is this, this guy who came in from North Carolina State or whatever, going to push for that job? That might actually end up being counterproductive too. So a lot of it comes down to Smothers for me.
Vogues, let's take another step forward with Smothers, and what do you believe can translate from Logan, the high school phenom, to Big Ten quarterback? We know that Luke McCaffrey could run and was a phenomenal athlete. There were accuracy issues, at least this part of his career. It's not that McCaffrey can't be a better thrower down the road, but he won't do that in Lincoln, obviously. But with Smothers, what do you think, or what do you like about his game that can eventually make him a winner at Nebraska?
I honestly don't know at this point, because we can go back and look at his high school tape, and that looks as good as you'd expect for a guy who gets a scholarship to a place like Nebraska. I mean, the speed jumps off the screen there when you do go back and watch those. So that's good. I mean, that's a weapon that Nebraska clearly knows how to use, I think, for this offense to get up and running. It has to use that weapon less often than it has over the past, particularly 2 seasons. So that's a nice thing to have with some others. Like, it really comes down to me, is he a guy who is capable of kind of letting the offense work for him? And Adrian Martinez, I think, is getting better in that regard, but there's still just moments where you're like, okay, if you make this other decision here, and this happens to all quarterbacks, of course, but you make this decision here, like, it really comes down to who's making that right decision more often, I think. And if Smothers is able to do that, we've heard some reports that, hey, this guy came in and got things really quickly. We don't know. It's all encouraging, but we just haven't seen anything at the college level yet from him.
Brandon Vogel with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Have we passed like are we past like a safe marker in terms of staff movement? Do you expect that Nebraska will have staff movement? One of the assistants maybe taking a job somewhere else, or have we kind of passed that season to where it's probably safe?
Not quite. I mean, just that UCF job being open, and I'm not talking the head coach job for, I think, any of Nebraska's assistants, but who knows? UCF needs an AD first, but just with some of the connections to that program, I could see that being the kind of biggest danger for potential departures. Still, you get through that one without having any guys plucked away, you might be okay for a good while, barring some sort of bizarre post-spring football or summer change, which we've seen a couple of, but don't happen too often. So I'd say Nebraska kind of survived about 90% of that journey and probably has about 10% more to go.
There's been some funny social media postings about getting the band back together and back at Central Florida by some Nebraska fans. But, Kranak, and Vogues, I want both of your takes here on just what's been your feel and read on the social media response, not just from a Kurt Warner, kind of putting the flyer out for his boy, and dads do that, but also just the player response to the upheaval and the transfers. What's your takeaway? Because it seems like everybody on Nebraska's roster had to comment about how much they love being here, which, great. You're backing your coach, I guess. Kranak, you go. I should say, Vogues, you go first. Kranak, you follow.
Well, we all remember the one-loss Kansas team in 2007, and of course we recall that sort of magical season was spurred by all of the players getting on MySpace and talking about how cool things were, right? I mean, honestly, I probably have too cynical of a view of this, but you don't see that sort of thing happen very often. We've seen it happen twice at Nebraska now in the past, 5 months? I just, that thing, watching that unfold alarms me more than anything I've seen on the field in the past 3 seasons. And I honestly mean that. It tells me it's a case of, protesting too much. It's like, why is this happening? Who is trying to be convinced here that things are great and things are awesome? And, maybe I should just read it more earnestly, but in my mind, I can't.
It's questionable. And just for folks that maybe aren't familiar, on Twitter within the span of a couple hours, you had dozens and dozens of players tweeting out some version of, God, I love this team and I can't wait to get to work. We're more unified than ever, right? There's some iteration of that. You had dozens of players all send it out. So it was obviously coordinated. I think what the question ultimately comes down to is who led that coordination, right? If this was like Jared Lambright and Frost being like, all right, team, listen, we're getting a lot of crap out there. We need everybody to tweet their support. That's terrible. And that is contrived, and that is, oh, my God. If it was Adrian Martinez and Cam Taylor-Britt and Ben Stilley being like, I'm sick of that rumor crap out there. All of you are going to get on your Twitter and you're going to commit to this team, right? That's different.
Then it's okay.
Right. Honestly, that's different. Like, it was obviously coordinated, but who led that coordination is a big part of this. And if it was the staff, I'm with Brandon. I'm very worried about where their focus is at. If it was the players, I'm like, okay, maybe a little weird, but at least it was player led.
Right. Do we know who coordinated it?
No.
Do you, Elijah?
I don't, but the thing I keep coming back to is you don't see a program like Ohio State doing this. You don't see all the players.
You know why?
Because they win.
Yeah.
But they
don't have to.
That's what concerned me is, like, does there have to be the message put out that the team is unified? You're a team. You'd expect that the team is unified, even despite transfers coming out. Like,
well, the last month, all we've heard is there's no unity, or at least on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, it's just crazy. And let's get spring ball here. Vogues, what are you working on this weekend, and what's coming up next week? And are you going to try Gary Barnett's salt and vinegar wing recipe?
Oh, I hadn't. I missed that interview, but I'm intrigued. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Super Bowl food planning in the week ahead, but in work stuff, obviously got signing day next week, which probably will be mostly quiet for Nebraska. And that might be a good thing for Nebraska. Currently working on something there, kind of spinning off from it being signing day, the official, the old school signing day next week, and just the kind of spate of departures that Nebraska constantly seems to be dealing with. So look for something on that next week.
All right. Vogues, have a good weekend, man. This was fun this morning. Thanks for your time.
Yep, sounds good, guys. Thanks.
All right. Brandon Vogel with his HailVarsity.com and magazine. Weekend edition, Hail Varsity Radio. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kranak, Elijah Herbal. We'll step away. The Iron Horse is up next. Gary Sharp with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kranak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7.5 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out.
Excellent strategy, sir.
Well, we are still 2 martinis away. Working on that. We welcome in the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp. Sharpie, any martinis last night?
No. How about you rephrase the question? Have you ever drank a martini? The answer would be no.
Really? I had one during the championship game. It's great. My buddy Jaybird made it. It was phenomenal. I had one, and I only needed one.
I've just never been a martini person. I usually I go hard or go home.
Sure. No, I get it. Jaybird made me a dirty martini, and it was wonderful. Okay. It's been an interesting week, Sharpie, for Nebraska football. And where would you like to start, my friend? What kind of is the sore thumb of the week? The transfers, the media appearances, and that's not necessarily that they're a sore thumb, but you've had more media moments from Coach Frost here. I think 3 in the last week, and I know he's kind of getting the word out. You've got signing day around the corner that may not be that newsworthy, and Keyshawn Johnson going piñata on Nebraska yesterday morning. So a lot to talk about. Oh, and by the way, your offensive coordinator was up for a head job. So we're going to spin the dial, and where'd it land on for you? What do you want to hit?
Well, wasn't this week just another week in Nebraska football?
That's about right, man.
With some, Nebraska looked like an everyday college football program with guys transferring, guys preaching unity. They look like I think a typical week in Nebraska football. And when you're 12-20 and a guy with the last name of McCaffrey and Warner and who their fathers are, they transfer. It's going to get headlines outside of the program, and maybe you don't know or don't care to ask why they're no longer with the program. I think Nebraska, it's going to be, we all have to buckle in. It's going to be a long off season until we get to the start of the season. just because there's so much anticipation for year 4 to see if this is going to happen. But between now and then, what do you want players and the head coach to say? They're not, do you want them to speak and give real talk? I think Scott tries to do that, and I think in ways he does that. But it's, you're going to have to take everything with a grain of salt, and either you have full trust that this is going to happen, or you're going to be very skeptical. And you're also going to have the past history of being battered and bruised and, things that have been said before buying in and not happening. So get ready. It's going to be a long off season. But I think this last week was just typical for Nebraska and typical in college football.
In hindsight, do you think Coach Frost in some ways coddled and or compromised on some basic principles in how he treated and dealt with folks like Wandale, folks like Luke?
Well, I'm going to separate them, Mark, because Wandale Robinson, to me, that situation is off the field. I don't think that has anything to do with on the field. Maybe a little bit of how he was used, so much at running back that he was getting, just hammered and physically was getting worn down. I don't know. I think there was a disconnect off the field there. That went sideways. You don't present somebody like Wandale as the face of your program, and all of a sudden he is gone, and it's just strictly football. I think with Luke, I think Nebraska made a mistake in recruiting. I think Nebraska got onto Luke McCaffrey, and they thought, okay, Adrian Martinez is going to be our quarterback for 3 years, and Luke's really not going to be pressed into service, and we can bring him along and develop him. Well, all of a sudden you had some inconsistency at quarterback, and you had some injuries, and all of a sudden Luke McCaffrey is pressed into duty, and you haven't developed him. So part of Luke not working out at Nebraska is on Nebraska, and part of it is Luke isn't a quarterback that Nebraska can use right now consistently. He just is not. They gave him a little bit of a chance to showcase his ability, and it just didn't happen. And he wants to play quarterback, but he doesn't want to sit behind Adrian Martinez. And then you factor in the fact that Martinez could still be here for a couple of more years. And you're thinking, okay, I'm not going to be able to beat him out. I want to go somewhere else and play. So I look at these transfers, and there's plenty. And when you're struggling and there's that amount of guys that transfer, and they're not all created the same, and there's not a lot of green pastures for guys that have left Nebraska, they're all created differently. I think Luke goes, part of it's on him, part of it's on Nebraska. And I never want to hear a player describe as a future. We were trying to put in context what he needs to program.
Gary Sharp's with us. Sharpie, we're gonna we had you cut out there. Let's see if we can connect with you. You still have us, man?
Yes, I got you.
Okay. It's super fuzzy and hazy. We're going to try calling you back in 2 seconds, okay? Hang on for us. So we'll reconnect with Gary Sharp.
I'll answer any of your questions in the meantime.
Okay,
What
okay.
questions do you have?
So,
questions.
Short side option, 3rd and 4. Do we see it next fall?
No. Next question.
Okay. Is there going to be a quarterback sharing situation between Logan Smothers and Luke and Adrian Martinez?
Nope. Logan transfers into the year. Next question.
Wow. Do you make changes in year 5 to your staff?
No. Next question.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to Gary Sharp. Sharpie.
That's better. He's a better guest than me.
Kranak said no on staff changes for year 5. No on sharing quarterback duties with Logan Smothers and Adrian Martinez. So we got those covered. I'm interested in your take on the Warner situation with Nebraska, because Daddy went to social media yesterday, and he's trying to get his son a spot somewhere. He was, promoting his kid's film from Nebraska. What do you make of the Warner social media, if anything? And we were talking with Vogel about this. What do you make about the onslaught of Nebraska players' social media about just how good the culture is / the all-in side of things?
Well, let's start with Cade on the field. First of all, he's a valuable asset. He became a captain. Guys relied on him. He was an older guy. But his playing time really diminished as the season went along, and he got passed over by some guys. And there's really a logjam of wide receivers, unproven wide receivers, but I don't think there's a spot for Cade. And he wants to play. And I think he ends up at a group of 5 or an FCS school where he can go and play. The tweets are, we've seen this before. I think they're okay. Some of them are corny, but that's not for us. They're not sending the message to us as a consumer. They're sending it across the board to former players, guys that are thinking about coming here, guys that are inside of the program. My worry was you do something like that, a concerted effort to let everybody know that you're all in. There's unity. I kind of get the theme that it's going to be us against them this upcoming season. What happens if one person, because they didn't get the memo, hey, at noon on Thursday, we're going to start sending out these mass texts, they're in class and they don't see the request and they don't put out a tweet, and people go, man, is that guy not in? That's what I fear is we read too much into it. But at this point, tweets aren't going to win you any football game. I know that there's a touting a culture, that the culture is better. And trust me, I believe that Scott Frost believes in his heart of hearts that they are close. They can look at the close losses. He feels that they're about ready to turn the corner. I don't know how many other people believe in that, because all we can see is what happens on Saturday, and that's all that matters. But if the culture is better in the program, and it is considerably better in the last couple of years, it's still got some work to do. But what is the culture, and how do you take that improved culture and it relates to Saturdays where you are ultimately judged? I think those are all questions that they'll have to figure out as we move through the offseason into the start of the season. But I was okay with them. I mean, I didn't get as fired up. I think you had to figure out who the audience was they were sending that out to.
Gary Sharp with us, Hail Varsity Radio. So if you are Scott Frost at this point, and here you are, you just finished up year 3, rash of transfers just happened, winter conditioning's happening, spring ball's on the way, doesn't look like a lot of staff movement, tough schedule coming up next year. Things have not been working. Obviously, you've not been getting W's. It appears that maybe his attention has been spent maybe in places it shouldn't be, and he's left maybe a couple things to chance. So if you are Scott Frost, where are you focusing your attention to get everybody in that building on the same page? Because they're not right now, or they haven't been to date. What are you doing? What are the 1 or 2 things that you were going to do to get everybody on the same page?
Communication. Take the temperature of the room. Find out whether you're a young player, an older player, from rural Nebraska, from an urban city. How we doing? How we feeling? What do we need? What do we think needs to happen? I think take the temperature of the program just to get a good feel that the vision that you have, players also have. And you also have the same vision of the roadmap, how to get there. I will tell you, I think there's a reason. And you know what? There still could be a staff change. We don't know. There's still, staffs around the country. They're still putting together their personnel. I think, and so not changing the staff also gives you an indication of how Scott feels about this is moving forward. He feels like they're close. He doesn't want to disrupt things and keep things moving along. The job that he's going to hire that previously was held by Ron Brown, that player personnel role, I think might be the most important hire that he will have all season long, off season long, even more than the special teams analyst, because that role, they're going to ask that person kind of to be the go-between between the players and the staff, and somebody who you can bend the ear of and talk about things that are going on that you don't want to go to your position coach or your head coach. I think that'll be a vitally important hire for Scott here in the offseason. But does he have the right temperature of his entire football program, and are they feeling the same thing? If that's the case, then Nebraska can move forward, and then we can start just focusing on X's and O's on the field and how you play football on Saturdays.
Sharpie, you nailed it with communication, and it's got to be uniform. What you say to player needs to be said to coach, and what needs to be said to coach the player. I mean, it's all got to be in lockstep. And is that something you can get better at as a head coach? And it's not that Scott's been a head coach forever, but he's been a head coach long enough. But it just seems like there's just different, as Kranak's nailed, different pages here. Can you get better as a communicator or is it something that you're going to have to like actively work on because it's not a strength from a skill standpoint? I don't doubt the X's and O's and just the want-to part of it, but just from the CEO standpoint that we talk about every week, I mean, you got to be a good communicator with your team.
Well, isn't it just kind of life when you become a leader is you lead by the things that you say and you believe in them and you live your life that way. Matt Campbell has done a great job at Iowa State. One of the first things when people say, how is Matt Campbell doing it in all of the world in Ames, Iowa? I say, you know what? Because he got a group of young men to believe in him, because what Matt Campbell says at Iowa State, what he says that, some of the times it's not about football, it's about life. He lives it. He believes it. Players can see it. So they look at the message, and they want to believe in you. They will do anything for you. They have given their commitment to you to come play football for you. They want you to be there for them. You're there for them. You got to be there for them as well. And it's that dynamic of being on the same page and understanding what you think and what they think, and does it match up? And that's not easy for everyone in leadership roles. But if you're saying something, you've got to live it as well, because you cannot fool players anymore. They just won't take with a grain of salt, oh, he said that, so that's true. This is what we're going to do. Players, kids nowadays, you guys got kids, they doubt what you say, until you prove that that's right or you show them. And I think that's for some leaders, especially in college athletics, that's a tough hill to get over. But once you get over, you're cooking with peanut oil. And I think Scott's growing in that role. I think there have been times throughout the first 3 years where there's parts of Nebraska football that not necessarily have to do with X's and O's that have been a little bit too big for him. So he's got the off season. I think he's done I think I sense a more of an urgency to get this fixed on the football field and off the football field than I have in the previous 3 years. And maybe that's a good sign of him growing as a CEO, and along with he's going to have to grow as a football coach.
It's funny, we're kind of diving into, just being a better communicator and making sure that players are buying what you're selling, or believe in what you say. You look at defense, and, a lot of programs at this level, yes, they're all one team, but defense is kind of its own thing. Offense is kind of its own thing. And if you look at defensively what's going on with transfers or lack thereof, or guys leaving early or not, it appears that Eric Chinander has his side of the ball on point, right? Like, they are going the same direction. There isn't a lot of dissension. They are improving. Do you think Scott can maybe learn something from how Chinander is running that side of things?
Maybe a little bit, Mark. When you're having success, it's pretty easy to get people to buy in. I think there's one thing that hurt this offense this past year. I love this phrase: culture never graduates. It should never have a graduation ceremony. It should always be there, and it should be passed down. Nebraska defensively has benefited from some guys that have been around for a while. So they know what's going on. They know what is expected. And so they've learned it, and they've passed it down. Where on offense, you've had a kind of a revolving door at certain positions where guys are new, and they don't get exactly what's going on, and they're a little bit younger. And so they're not passing things down. Get old, stay old is another line that has become pretty popular over the last month. I think that will benefit Nebraska offensively. They've got now some older guys that understand the process, but they need everybody to buy into that process and keep it moving. Not just buy in, but keep it moving. And once you have success, build on that success. I think that's what we saw on defense. Guys had success individually. They had success as a group, and they moved the thing forward. Now they've got to make that next jump on defense, but that's a sign of guys that got older, that know what's going on, that have a lot of trust in what's being told to them and who they're playing with, and you saw the result. Can that happen on the offensive side of the football? because, again, you're going to have some young guys and you're going to have some guys that are brand new to this whole thing. That's the question to move that offense forward if you want kind of the similarity of why the defense has been so strong together and people want to be back and playing in that defense.
Gary Sharp's with us, the Iron Horse. It's Hail Varsity Weekend Edition. Sharpie, what's your read with the Matt Lubick Montana State gig? And is that something that you think continues down a path? Has it been shut down? What do you know or feel about that, and what would it say? A guy wants to go home and take a head job, or is there something deeper if a guy leaves just after a year?
Well, I wonder if he's being connected to that job because of his family connection and his personal connection. If it's just you're trying to figure out who would be candidates, so you're piecing together some dots, kind of like we've done with coaching searches around here. You'd have to take a pay cut to go be a head coach. I don't get the sense that Matt Lubick wants to be a head coach. Certainly Scott is not pushing him out the door. That would be an unfortunate thing for Nebraska to lose your offensive coordinator, but even more, you would lose your wide receiver coach, and you'd be on to the third wide receiver coach in 3 years. It's something to watch, but I'm not overly concerned about it. But unless he wants to be a head coach, then I don't know why he would leave Nebraska after a short time. But there's also the caveat, guys. Matt Lubick's a little bit different. He's a quirky guy. He's had an interesting career path as a football coach, and then the year off that he was back home in Fort Collins. So you never say never. But in this case, I think it's just the connection. His name was mentioned, and we'll see how long his name continued to get mentioned.
How real was Fisher in Georgia, in your opinion?
I think it was real. I mean, that's a smart play by Kirby Smart. Travis Fisher is well known in the industry. And he's a guy that's got connections in Georgia and connections in Florida, and it's recruiting in the SEC. And then, by the way, Travis Fisher can coach as well. And this is gonna be a go around, I think, every year. But it also says something about Nebraska. But Travis Fisher has been courted by Lane Kiffin and Kirby Smart back-to-back years, and he's comfortable at Nebraska. Now, he's paid well, but he likes it here. He likes the people he's around. He likes the people he coaches. I think that's a good sign for Nebraska. But get used to this every year. Travis Fisher is really, really popular outside of Nebraska and inside of Nebraska.
Gary Sharp's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Sharpie, a couple minutes before we check out of here. As you kind of turn your attention to signing day, a feel or a thought, I know there's a couple of spots. Is one reserved for quarterback? Is one reserved for best available? And give me the feel as we speak this morning on Avante Dickerson.
Well, I don't think Nebraska will sign anybody on Wednesday. That's just my feel. I think Nebraska will hold some scholarships. If it's going to be a quarterback, I think it's after the spring. Maybe a FCS guy who had a really good spring, or a junior college transfer, or somebody that is leaving their program after spring football. In regards to Avante Dickerson, Nebraska's done everything right in recruiting him. They have let it be known before he committed to Minnesota, after he committed to Minnesota, that the door is still open and he would be a valuable member of the class of 21. Avante is a little bit different, as we all have gotten to know. He keeps things close to his vest. And that's okay. Most kids are wide open about their recruiting, not Avante, except for he on his own paid for a trip to Eugene, Oregon last weekend. He's very enamored with the Oregon Ducks, and they quietly have done a great job in recruiting him. And I think Avante Dickerson at 8:10 on Wednesday morning will select the Oregon Ducks. And not much Nebraska can do. They've done everything in recruiting. If someone doesn't want to stay home, they want to go explore a place in this country that they've never been before, and also go to a program that right now is better than Nebraska, can you fault the kid? But this is what you don't do in this day and age of the portal. You don't burn that bridge, because you never know. Maybe things don't work out in Eugene. A couple of years later, you get a phone call. Hey, Coach, I'm looking to come home. And you say, come on down. So I think Nebraska will be quiet on Wednesday, and I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. I think Nebraska can fill in some holes down the road. And remember, we still like the guys that signed back in December.
Sure. Sharpie, go ahead.
By the way, I think that's actually a better fit for him. You know what I mean? Like, if you just look at his skill set and how he rolls, like, he's more of a speed finesse kind of player than he is like a physical Big Ten come up and smack a 230-pound running back player.
Well, I think that's
right?
a good point, Mark. And I think that's a good point. And I also would see him. I think he would get on the field sooner at Nebraska as a return guy than he would playing his natural position.
Yep.
Sharpie, we'll get ready for the Super Bowl in a week. You take care and have a great week. Thanks for the time today.
Hey, thanks as always, guys.
Appreciate you. Thanks, Gary Sharp with us on Hail Varsity. Well, Kranak, we'll do it again, bud. Thanks for jumping in.
You too, sir. Okay.
There he is, Mark Kranak, Elijah Herbal, Chris Schmidt Weekend Edition. Get the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. Back at you Monday with Hail Varsity at 4 o'clock, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.